the ongoing refurbishment works on Douglas Promenade. You're obviously in a absolutely prime location, under normal circumstances at least, with passing trade. Just tell us a bit about what it's been like for you so far during this whole period, if you could.
Well, the promenade, it started very up at the other end of the promenade, 2018, September I think was when they first started, 2018. Now, initially we were hearing the stories from the traders at the other end and so on, and straight away we were concerned about what was coming in the future. But we then started to experience a decline, even from that early 2019 in passing trade and so on, because people weren't coming to the promenade. Once the work began in earnest on Lot Promenade, which was probably August to September last year, the trade has been decimated, to say the truth. Most of the hotels haven't got anybody in them. They certainly haven't ever since COVID. But before that, a lot of the hotels had massive drops in tourists because there was no way of getting to them, and they were going to stay in other premises around off the promenade. So that obviously affects our trade, because a lot of our summer trade would be tourists having a nice stroll up and down the promenade, or even locals on an evening having a walk up and down the promenade. Oh, we'll stop in and have a drink, or there's a bit of music on in there. We'll stay for an hour and listen to some music. And now that's all basically been destroyed because you just can't get access. No one knows how to find us. At the minute, we're in the middle of a rabbit warren of Harris fencing. The only access at the minute is from Senna Slip, which is a small access lane from Castle Street into the side of the building. They've just told me today that they're going to close that within 2 weeks and dig it all up and make that closed to pedestrianism. I've asked them how they're going to have access for me for even fire regulations, and they haven't got a clue, basically. That's what my answer was today. I don't know how that's going to happen. So that's the situation we're in at the minute. We need some plan. There doesn't appear to be a plan.
To date, can you give us an idea of what the impact has been like on trade for you?
Before COVID, I would have been talking around about 25 to 30% down on my general trade. Obviously, this year, including that, I'm well over 50% down now. And the trade has come back. The locals have been brilliant. We've been out. We've had great events on every weekend. But there just isn't. The weekends are fine. Not fine, but well supported still.
Yeah.
Because people actually want to come to the events. But if there is just no passing trade, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings, all of those kind of events, no one's coming, no one's walking along the promenade.
And you've mentioned there's quite a heavy reliance, not just for yourselves, but for other businesses on the prom, on people who are walking past without necessarily intending to go in, really. And
well, that's what a promenade is, isn't it?
Yeah,
you walk up and down it and visit businesses on it. And that's what we've had a wonderfully successful time for 27 years at Quids Inn. And we've always relied on a huge part of our turnover would come not only from TT, but from all of the rest of the tourism, bowls weeks, cycle weeks, all of those generated trade for our business. And those people would walk up and down the prom in the evenings, and just nobody will walk the prom now. And even if people are choosing to walk on the seaward side, there's no access to the businesses on the land side. I'm
not going to ask you about any business sensitive information, but one thing we can say is if you're losing between a quarter and a half of your income, it doesn't take an astute businessman or businesswoman to say that's your margin's gone, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
There's no profit in it at the minute. I'm lucky that we have had the success of the past, and we will get through the situation. But the help that has been offered so far, there has been some good situations. They did a really good support scheme with advertising and information about products and how to get your name out there and so on, which was good. They have helped in other ways, the Department of Enterprise. But just in terms of the infrastructure department, I just don't see any plan at all as to how we're going to develop and get parts of the promenade done.
Sorry, go on.
There's been no work outside our particular premises for 3 weeks now, and yet they announced they're going to dig up the only real access we have, especially for people with limited mobility, and we do have quite a lot of those kind of people that drink in Quids Inn, older people, couples and gentlemen in the evenings, and it's a community pub. people come in there to meet their friends and so on. They haven't got other places, and COVID's obviously affected a lot of people like that. But trying to get the Quids Inn now is a very, very difficult situation for most people.
You've mentioned that you've had discussions with other business owners and business operators along the prom. Is this a shared experience? Are other people feeling the same pinch?
I don't think you could find anyone that would have any positive news to say about the works, really. We all were in support of the promenade being redeveloped. We're all really looking forward to the fact that we'll have a beautiful place for our whole island when it's completed. And there is lots of good to come from that, hopefully in the future.
Are these businesses going to be alive to see that? That's what it really boils down to, isn't it?
That is the scary thing, isn't it? I was just talking to a friend of mine who has a guest house very close to Quids Inn. Very popular, very highly rated guest house. They had, as soon as the air corridor opened to Guernsey, they had 8 people book in. Now, being reputable and decent people, they contacted all of the bookings and said, we have to make you aware of the access issues to the hotel. They lost all but 2 of those bookings straight away, and they went, and they've obviously gone to other areas of the island rather than stay on the promenade. And you've seen it, you've seen the people, you've seen what the infamous Guernsey man said. We're perplexed by the state of the promenade. I have to live on it every day. I'm perplexed.
It's often described as the shop window, isn't it? It's the first impression for a lot of people. Not necessarily, obviously, if you're flying to the island, but it's the postcard view of Douglas. I mean,
that's it, and it's always been a beautiful place. I've lived on the promenade since I was 5 years old. I started up at the candy store area on the other way of Queen's Prom. I spent my whole life living and working on the promenade, and I have a huge place in my heart for it. At the minute, I'm terrified about what's going to come along in the meantime.
What is the outlook? You've mentioned that Quids Inn will probably be okay. We touch wood, of course. Yeah. From discussions you've had, is that the case across the board? Do you think there will be some casualties?
It's really not. I think there is. There's definitely going to be casualties. Obviously, we had this pandemic is not going to help anybody in business, but I don't think I think there was a lot of businesses before that matter that were already struggling very badly, and I know certain guest houses and certain restaurants and so on have had real issues for a long, long time, and there's no meat on business bones after that to survive the COVID situation.
Have government support schemes helped on those fronts?
I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say they have helped. They're very difficult sometimes to activate, and sometimes it's just not fair the way that some of them are administrated. I think the idea is fair, and most of them are very good, and I must thank the government for putting these schemes in place. But actually getting access to those schemes seems very difficult. One of the schemes I took on, I started applying for in February. I was originally told I was going to be granted it in early March, and I received it, I think, 2 weeks ago, so a part payment for it.
How's communication been with government, aside from the support schemes? Communication about what works are ongoing, what the plan is?
We have the My Prom situation. They've had a meeting today in the Savoy and so on. They do try and help. I have got a contact with who I phone up, and he does try to at least listen to me. Often he leaves me infuriated and I leave him infuriated. But there is a way of getting there. But what you don't see is action on your issues. And that's what I'm very concerned about. If they close Centre Slip, I may as well be closed because there really isn't any real access to Quids Inn then. So what's the point of me being open? And the talk of it, doing it, if they do it before the August bank holiday, the Super Manx bank holiday, I may as well not be.
On a practical level, what does that stop you from doing? Is it deliveries? Is it
deliveries,
footfall? Is it
deliveries? Mainly, it's getting people to the business. You know, taxis. Most people on a night out, especially if there's any inclement Manx weather, they're not going to walk 400 metres or 500 metres from the nearest point, and that's what we're talking about. And also, people with restricted mobility and so on, as I've said, they're the people who will end up not being able to come down and struggling to get there. We need taxi access really within maybe 100 metres of every business on the promenade. I think that's only fair. I think that's what should be expected. We're all doing our part for the Manx economy.
That's the people on foot or the people getting dropped off. How about people who are driving in and the parking provision? Has that made a difference?
Well, obviously, as a public house, parking isn't a huge issue for us. What we do have access for bands and so on. At the moment, that's not an issue because we have centre slip. Again, we've got some massive bands coming up in Quids Inn, ideally over the bank holiday weekend. They need to get their equipment in and out of the premises. We need to get deliveries in and out of the premises. You know, these kegs weigh 90 to 100 kilos. They can't drop them in Market Street and deliver them 100 yards down through the street.
So what's the plan when it comes to the bands, when it comes to deliveries?
The word is that there will be some form of access, but as I said, within the hour, I've been talking to the Department of Infrastructure, and they haven't been able to give me any real plan of how that's going to happen.
What would need to change for your situation to improve?
They need to complete some of the works that they're doing. I think everybody on the Isle of Man's said this 100 times. Get some of it done. Work in stages. Obviously, we've had this issue. I know the paving's an issue because it's an Irish company and they're not allowed on the island as such, or as yet. I'm not quite sure how that works. But like I said, there's been no work done outside hours for 3 weeks. There must be work that can get done. That road, all of the piping, all of the infrastructure underneath the road, as far as I'm aware, has been laid in that area. They've moved on to other areas. Get that road finished, and then allow us access from the front. So when you close centre slip, we can have vehicular access from the front.
The message from the minister, the new infrastructure minister, who came in midway through this scheme, was that the plan now is to get all of this done by March next year, so that we can have a tourist season. Next season, effectively. Are you on board with that as a plan?
Absolutely.
Does that work for local businesses?
And especially when we did get to late February, and it was obvious we were going to move into a period of closure or restrictions, I went to my prom and said, "Look, just do whatever you want now. Just get as much done as you can." Obviously, the closure of construction as a whole was a setback, but it was necessary at the time. As soon as they've started working, it did appear to start really well. What I don't see is it continuing now at that pace.